All right. Once again, my name is Josh Walker. I'm the co-president of the American Fork Chamber of Commerce, and we're glad to have you here today for this debate about the Alpine School District split. And so this will be Proposition 11 and 14, I believe, on your ballot. Here in American Fork, Lehi, Highland, Alpine, Cedar Hills, those 5 cities, the residents are voting on those 2 propositions. And so 11 is the one that is specifically about the school district split, I believe. So this is a little bit about the chamber. So we often host debates. We do city council debates. We are a neutral party. The official stance of the chamber is we do not take a stance on political issues. And that way we can remain neutral and host events like this. And a large part of it is because our board of directors is comprised of business owners in the area, and our business owners may have very differing opinions on what they think on any particular political candidate or issue. And so because of that, instead of forcing our board into arguments and knives and forks at each other, we just stay neutral. So once again, we'd like to thank you for coming out. If you want to submit a question, you are welcome to write them down on a form and then bring them to me. Through the process over the years, we have discovered that it's dangerous to give any in particular person a microphone because they can often turn it into a soapbox and sometimes say inappropriate things. And so we are just limiting this to questions submitted on the papers that we will ask our panelists. So we're going to start with up to 5 minutes. We're giving both sides up to 5 minutes to present their position on the initiative. And then we'll just go right into the questions. And for each question, we'll give each side 2 minutes to respond to the question. And then if either side would like a rebuttal, they will get 1 minute to offer rebuttal to the other side. If one side says, yes, I'd like my minute to do a rebuttal, then the other side automatically gets an additional minute to respond, okay? So that's how we're gonna work it tonight. As long as we have questions, we'll go all the way up until 8:30. Otherwise, we will finish when we're done with the questions. We will not necessarily answer or ask every single question. If there are similar questions, then we'll do our best to combine them into one succinct question for our panelists. So, with that being said, I'm going to introduce you to our panelists, and then we will get started. And I am going to read this just in the order that I received them, just so no one has any question. We're unbiased in all of this. All right, so the first person that actually sent me their bio was Joe Jensen. Joe Jensen, racing mountain bikes in, is it Leadville, Colorado, running down Boylston Street in Boston, or just commuting by bike to school, Joe is an endurance junkie. That training has served him well as an educator for the past 29 years. Joe has been an English teacher, athletic coach, assistant principal, junior high principal, and high school principal. He is now the director of administrative development in Alpine School District. He also teaches as an adjunct in BYU's Ed Leadership Department, preparing future generations of school leaders. He is grateful for his job as an educator because it gives him something meaningful to do between bike rides. He would rather play catch with his 13-year-old boy in the backyard than attend an NFL football game, especially since it's minimum 6-hour drive to an NFL football game. He would rather read great literature than go on a specific effects movie. Or special effects movie. He would rather plan a good road trip with Julie and his 6 kids than book a Caribbean cruise. And he would rather garden than go to a garden party. In his endurance pursuits, he lives by the mantra, there's no bad weather, there's just bad gear. And his kids roll their eyes when he claims doctor status on their medical questions, which every dad should, right? Very good. Heather Newell is serving her first term on the Lehi City Council, following her time on the Lehi Planning Commission, where she also served as chair. A lifelong Utah County resident, Heather was born in American Fork, grew up in Orem, and graduated from Mountain View High School. She attended BYU, where she developed a strong interest in emerging web technologies and became self-taught in web development and SEO, leading to an early career opportunity with Excite.com. Currently, she is the Chief Technology Officer for a Provo-based nonprofit. Outside of her professional role, Heather is in her 3rd year as Marketing Director for Sky Ridge High School Theater, where she also leads the volunteer team. She and her husband are the proud parents of 4 sons, each attending different schools, one in 6th grade, 8th grade, 12th grade, and a 2nd-year college student. Next, we have Amber Bonner. Amber Simister Bonner is a former Alpine School District Board member representing the Lone Peak High School area from 2019 to 2022. While on the board, she worked diligently on the Finance and Capital Planning Committees. Amber grew up in Orem and Linden and graduated from Pleasant Grove High School. She graduated from BYU and married Dave Bonner. They have lived in Cedar Hills for almost 24 years and have 7 children, 2 girls and 5 boys. Her 5 older children have all graduated from Lone Peak High School, and the younger 2 currently attend Lone Peak and Mountain Ridge Junior High. Amber has worked as an aide and substitute teacher in our local schools and has volunteered regularly in school and district positions for 20 years. Currently, Amber is serving in the Utah PTA as State Education Commissioner, working on advocacy efforts for children and schools throughout the state. She also continues to be very involved in her local schools, serving as School Community Council Chair at both Lone Peak High School and Mountain Ridge Junior High, and on the PTSA board at Lone Peak. She spends numerous hours with the Lone Peak Marching Band, serving for the 3rd time as booster president. Amber loves being in our schools and assisting teachers, administrators, and students in any way she can. And Kate Ross was born and raised in the Alpine School District. I assume that's what ASD stands for. She attended Highland Elementary, American Fork Junior High, and American Fork High School. Her children attended Snow Springs Elementary, Linden Elementary, Willow Creek Middle School, Lehi High School, and Timpanogos High School. She taught 7th and 8th grade English at Mountain Ridge Junior High for 10 years, worked as a first-year teacher coach for 4 years in all Alpine School District secondary schools. She was the principal of Linden Elementary for 11 years and is in her 3rd year as the principal of Oak Canyon Junior High and her 28th year in education. She is passionate about education and innovating solutions to help school communities thrive. She lives in Lehi with her husband and 2 daughters. Okay, so we're going to turn the time over to them. I'm going to invite my timer to join me over here. Thank you. And just a reminder, so we are recording this. We will put it on the Chamber YouTube channel. We would ask that no one else record this because there are concerns about someone taking certain tidbits and throwing them out there. This is the official video. It will be on the Chamber YouTube channel. Anyone is welcome to share it. We will have it available on our social media and on YouTube within the next couple days, and you are welcome to share the entirety of this program from there. All right, well, let's get started, shall we? We're going to give you 5 minutes, and ready, set, go.
All right. Arthur C. Brooks has written a lot about his concern that we have created an unhealthy political culture of contempt. He encouraged us to get back to a place where we can disagree better without hating people and imposing views. Let me share a thought from his book. He said, if we want more unity and less contempt, we need to get out of our comfort zones, go where we are not welcome, and spend time talking and interacting with people with whom we disagree. Not on lightweight stuff like sports and food, but on hard moral things. So congratulations for being here tonight, because we're doing exactly what he suggested. I'm certainly out of my comfort zone, and we're here talking and interacting with people with whom we disagree. I don't know Heather, but Amber's school involvement, past and present, is remarkable. I would be curious to know how many thousands of volunteer hours she has put into our schools over her lifetime, including currently, I think, president of 2 SCCs. All right. A couple of thoughts to frame tonight. This debate is not about an existential threat. It is not a moral battle. This probably even qualifies as a first world problem. Both sides are pursuing the same outcome, a great education for our kids. We just have some different views on the best path to that goal. And interestingly enough, we're not as far apart on this issue as you might think. Kate and I are actually not against smaller districts if people are willing to pay for it. There are some disadvantages to smaller districts and some disadvantages to big districts. There's advantage to both those things. Tonight, I'll even share with you guys how I would vote for it. So, sorry to disappoint. If you came here to see a cage fight, you'll be disappointed. Or if you came here to see the Hunchback of Notre Dame, you'll also be disappointed. However, there are two elements every voter should understand before they cast their ballot on Prop 11. First is that a smaller district simply costs more for a variety of reasons. There's no getting around that. And we'll go into more detail throughout the night. Second, there is a thrivability element to the split. It's about more than just financial feasibility. There will be unintended consequences to a change like this that affects thrivability in our school for educators and students. So we should be aware of that as we go to the ballot box. Also, a disclaimer, Kate and I are not here on behalf of Alpine School District. We are Central Boundary patrons and community members. We do both work for ASD and therefore have a valuable perspective on how a split will affect our thrivability. But we are not speaking for Alpine tonight. We have done our own research and would encourage you to do the same before you cast your vote. Also, as we are not spokespeople for ASD, there may be some questions tonight that get into a technical level we are simply not qualified to answer. So we will simply let you know if we don't know something specific on a given time.
Looks like they might be having some trouble hearing us in the very back.
Get the mic right here. Get it right to your shoulder.
Okay, is this good?
Yes.
Can you hear that? Okay. So as Joe said, we don't speak for Alpine School District. We do live in the central area, and one of the things that we are finding as we talk to our fellow educators is that all that I've talked to, but a majority of the educators that we know do not favor splitting at this time. And a lot of them are fearful to come forward for a couple of reasons. First has everything to do with what Joe was talking about, with a lot of emotion, a lot of hostile environments, either in person or online, where our teachers feel like they just don't want to engage. They also are fearful because they don't know where their future employment might lie, and they don't want to, engage in a hostile way with a potential employer. Both of us are career educators. This is my 28th year. This is Joe's 30th year. And we are here for our peers that don't have the luxury of retiring if this doesn't go a way that we're comfortable with. And we don't have any issue with smaller districts. Rather, we would like to highlight what makes our large district valuable and unique. Alpine is one of the highest performing districts in the state. It's also the largest. We view its size as an asset rather than an impediment. Its size allows flexibility in how resources are used to provide for the unique needs of all students and their educational communities, specifically growth needs in the west areas of the district and programs in the central and south areas of the district. Alpine comprises 14 municipalities that can help shoulder the load. I guess I'm out of time, so we need to do our due diligence in looking through this program or this opportunity and vote accordingly.
Would it be possible to see the time rather than...
We're working on that.
Okay.
Yep.
That would be better to have actually...
Yep. Okay.
Okay, are we on? Okay, great. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. This is a really important issue. It's going to have significant ramifications for our community. It's really important that voters understand both the possible benefits and drawbacks so that all of us can make an informed decision as we move forward. Prop 11 is an opportunity for voters in what is being called the central area to weigh in on the size of their local school district. We believe that the time has come to split Alpine School District and divide it into more manageable areas. There are several factors influencing this decision. Among them are a lack of equitable access to programs and student support, the likelihood of a West District being created, and also the size of school board member areas. First, I want to say Heather and I both belong to groups that we are not representing tonight, like Lehi City, Utah PTA, the community councils of the schools I'm at, things like that. So first of all, our first concern is there are significantly different opportunities for students in different areas of the district. In the central area, Lehi High is the only area that doesn't have a dual language program. American Fork High School is the only area that does not have an elementary ALL program. In the Lone Peak cluster, it's been recommended that we lose 2 of our 3 ALL programs and that the very successful life skills program in Highland Elementary be split up. So there's glaring variations there, and also between the central and south areas. Students in the central area are less likely to receive bus transportation to school, their class sizes are larger, our ratio of administrators to students is much higher, and while the central area has 28% of the Title I students in our district, we only receive 10% of the total Title I funding. More than $3 million each year provides extra teachers to under-enrolled schools in the south area, while central schools receive fewer teachers per student. Over the last 25 years, we've had kind of a symbiotic relationship between the two halves of Alpine District, the east and the west. Communities on the east side of the district have higher property tax values and therefore contributed a larger percentage of property tax funds toward building buildings. However, the communities on the west side contributed a significant amount of their per pupil funding to subsidize operational costs in the district. The failure of the 2022 bond threw this entire relationship out of balance. The west areas voted in favor of the bond, but because it ultimately failed, their building needs will not be completed in a timely manner. The MGT study done by Alpine District showed that if the West was to choose to become its own district, they would see a $27.5 million a year surplus that they could then use to build the schools that they need. This led the 4 West Side cities to decide that they should take the matter to their voters. Polling numbers indicate that the West proposition is likely to pass. A poll was actually done this week with 1,300 responses from likely voters in the West area. 54% of those voters were supportive of a split. 16% are undecided, but only 30% are opposed to the West split. These results indicate that it is unlikely that Alpine District is going to remain as one district. If any split at all passes, state law now requires that Alpine District be completely dissolved and entirely new districts, whether 2 or 3, will be formed at that point. The MGT study also said that if the West leaves, the remaining east half, so from Lehi all the way down to Orem, would be looking at a $14.5 million yearly shortfall in our operational costs. This is a significant deficit and would require impactful changes either to tax rates or to spending habits to resolve. The 3 areas in Alpine District also see really unique issues. In the west, there's overwhelming growth. In the south, we're seeing a student population decline. In central, patrons are concerned about class sizes, access to programs, and other items. This deficit would be really challenging to address because South and Central may want to address it in very different ways. In fact, for Central, one of the most equitable ways to solve that deficit would be to close a high school, a junior high, and at least 1 elementary school in Orem. That would mean that their enrollment numbers would be similar to the schools in the central area, but we would save the operational costs from those schools. This would be likely very unpopular in the South, and with board member representation shifting and being heavier in the South, it would probably be an unlikely scenario. The next issue that we are really concerned about is the size of our school board member areas. State law lays out the number of school board members that each district can have based on total student population. Currently, Alpine school board members represent more people than our house districts and over 12,000 students each. Enough that if each area wanted to become its own school district, so if we split into 7 districts, each area would still qualify for 7 board members. So becoming our own district would give the central area the ability to have 7 board members living in our community rather than the 2 that we have now. Addressing these representation and access concerns is of critical importance. Even the strongest advocates against Prop 11 and 14 agree that a future split is likely to occur. We believe that this current proposal is the best possible outcome for all areas.
Okay, that's the 5 minutes. All right. Thank you very much from all of our panelists for the introductions. Now, I think I misspoke. So I think in the email I sent you that we would give you up to 3 minutes for each question. So we'll go with that, 3 minutes. And our timer will be right here. So you can keep an eye on our timer. You'll see as it counts down how much time you have for the answer. And then we'll go with the rebuttals if either side needs a rebuttal. Now, it's important to note that most of the questions are going to be about the unknown, about what a new school district looks like, and most of the questions are directed towards that. And so obviously we have the for side that's prepared for what will it look like, but we need our against side to be able to respond to those questions and say, all right, we understand that there are whatever the question addresses, so how is the school district going to continue to address those questions, or how is it going to look moving forward? I know that the school district itself had a survey done and had recommendations that they presented to the public about certain ways to split the district. And that led to where we are now with the cities forming interlocal agreements. And so really what we're dealing with tonight is what is on the ballot. And so that's what we need to focus on, what is on the ballot, so that people have a clear understanding of how they should vote. And that's why we're here, to educate people exactly on what this initiative is, what it means to them personally. And then all we can do here is encourage you to vote. Do your research and then vote how you see is going to best meet your needs personally. And that's all. As a chamber, that's all we do, is we encourage you, please go out and vote. Do your research and vote. All right. So the first question. The city councils are moving this proposed district split forward through interlocal agreements, but the district employees are the ones who will have to implement everything if the split passes. What measures will be put in place, additional staffing, funding, to facilitate this massive undertaking? Current employees will have to complete the regular tasks associated with their jobs to ensure students are still learning and employees are supported. And if temporary employees would be brought in, who trains them, who will pay their salaries, and have all of this been accounted for in budget projections? This is from Karen and Lehi. So we're going to start with our 4 team. We'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay, so a lot of the questions around potential district split are difficult to answer. And the reason for that is, if the split passes in November of this year, the district would actually not split until July 1st of 2027. So there's almost 3 years there in which all of these types of questions would be answered. Next year, what we would see is citizens running to fill the new school board positions and to make all of those decisions. So at this point right now, it's difficult to say exactly what positions might be held, what changes might be made, because all of that, like is happening right now, is decided by our school board members. So we would have basically 2 sets of school boards. We would have one set that is for the new districts, that's setting up the new district and getting it ready to go, so that on July 1st, 2027, they're ready to go right out of the gate. And the current Alpine School Board would continue also working for Alpine School District to keep Alpine School District functioning and moving and working well. So those people can serve on both boards, the board of the new district and the current district, but they don't have to, and obviously voters would decide who the new representatives would be. Those representatives would then make those types of decisions. Do I think there would be changes? I absolutely think there will be changes. But one thing I want us to remember is we have 41 districts in Utah. 29 of those have less than 15,000 students. Every district does things differently. The same program might look a little different from one district to another. Compensation might look a little different from one district to another. But that doesn't mean that that service is unavailable, or that the compensation is worse, or that things are necessarily negative. So I do think that there will be some changes. But one nice thing about that is, before the district actually splits, July 1st, 2027, there's lots of time for the new school boards to be meeting, for the public to come in and comment and say what they want, and to get all of that set up. There's time to set up teacher compensation packages and all of those things, so that those will be known when the new district begins.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me? All right, I'll keep it right up close. I would encourage everyone to go and look at the materials that are on the Alpine School District website. This is the official reconfiguration feasibility study that was done by MGT. I would encourage you to go and look at the study that was done by the cities as well, because there is no scenario where this is cheaper. If you look on pages 50 to 54 in this document, you'll see that as a snapshot in time, right? So that means if we were to split right now this year and just look at operating costs, the central district would be $8 million in the hole, $8.2 million. Go look it up. And the benefit of this as well is that if you're having trouble sleeping at night, this will also serve as evidence. But it does have those answers there. Go look at it. And one of the things that I think you need to understand, that's an $8 million operating deficit right now. That does not include startup costs, right? Startup costs are going to be fairly massive. If we go with a three-way split, the startup costs in Jordan, when they split, were estimated at $60 million 16 years ago. If you adjust for inflation and talk about a three-way split, startup costs are going to be well over $100 million likely. I think that's a reasonable thing, or projection. It does not account for unforeseen expenses. There are many unforeseen expenses as you get into a project like this. It also does not account for the redundancy that will absolutely happen. When you have 3 districts, you have to have 3 bus garages, you have to have 3 district offices, you have to have 3 superintendents. And people say, well, we can cut staff here and there. For example, right now in Alpine School District, there's 8 supervisors. But one of the things that will happen is you might say, well, we can cut that back and it'll be a small enough district, we can have 3 supervisors. But guess what, if there's 3 supervisors in the south, 3 supervisors here, and 3 supervisors out west, that's 9 supervisors. So you've actually increased the number of supervisors. But that's one of the things that you have to understand. There's no way it becomes cheaper to split. And that's, I'll keep harping on that, and I will actually get to some point when I have more than 20 seconds. I'll talk about how I would actually vote for this.
And I also would just like to point out what Amber said, you know, these are future board decisions. And I mean, we can't project what future boards may or may not do if they want to share resources or they propose different kinds of solutions. There's no way of knowing what those unelected boards will do.
Okay, thank you. Sure, we'll pull up 1 minute, and you get 1 minute for a rebuttal.
Okay. So one of the problems with the MGT study is it used data from 2 different years. The students' number is different than the incoming number. And the other thing MGT didn't do is when you actually look at each of the scenarios, they have broken down the cost and the funding, and all they did for revenue is take the number of students times 9,094, and that was the revenue. So it's like it's not dividing it
Keep
out
the mic
and
up to your mouth, please.
and actually determining what's the cost per each area. So that's why the cities did analysis of that study. And in that study, we found that the central district would actually have a tax savings by splitting off. We're not determining if it's going to cost more for the entire district. What we're focusing on is the cities within the central district and what it's going to cost them. Yes, I can understand that it's going to cost more for the whole district-wide, but what we're looking at is, are we going to be able to take the funding, the tax funds from the central district and be able to apply them to our schools and to our area and meet the needs that we need to meet?
Okay, thank you. Yep, you get 1 minute.
Yeah, I would just say that, again, no study is perfect. The MGT study is not perfect, nor is the LR, is it called the LRB? No study is perfect, but in no scenario is it cheaper. Both studies show that it's going to be more expensive. And so you have to take that into account. And so when your campaign is that you're going to have better schools and lower taxes, it's not accurate, period.
Okay, so we had a question submitted while you were talking about this thing, and I think it's a perfect question to really set a better base of understanding for everyone. So the question is, what were the findings of the boundary study done by a third party? And we will start with our against panel.
Yeah, so again, I would encourage you to go to this on page 351 through I think 355 is the findings and recommendations. And rather than, Kate will actually summarize those quickly, but go and read it yourself because it is very compelling and it, I think, is pretty rational. Go read it, because the findings and recommendations were quite good, and Kate will summarize it.
And I'm talking specifically about the MGT study. Respondents from the community engagement believe that students are getting a good education in Alpine School District. Every subgroup indicates that students in Alpine are receiving a good or excellent education by large margins. As a group, respondents from community engagement endorsed a potential vote on reconfiguration, but all but one of the subgroups polled, the employees indicated their support for initiating a voting process. Overall, respondents from the community engagement indicated they would like to remain as one district. Despite their desire for a vote, a significant portion of the same polling participants also indicated their preference for the district to remain as one consolidated district. This dual sentiment points to the complexity of the community's perspectives. Another finding was if the district decides to put reconfiguration on the ballot, a reconfiguration resulting in, oh dear, I lost myself in my papers. It was preferred to have 2 districts instead of 3. That's the last point there.
And that's because a 2-way split is more responsible financially and from a thrivability standpoint. It does make some sense in some ways, and it's not a part of this debate. In some ways, it does make sense for the West to go. But the study very clearly showed that if there's going to be a split, it should be a 2-way split, not a 3-way split. For all the reasons. It is less efficient to have 3 smaller districts than to have 2 districts.
I think it's also important to note that neither the MGT study or the LRB study did a programming study. It was a financial feasibility study, but neither one, it's a shortcoming of both of those studies, does not talk about sustainability, growth of programs. Neither one of them talk about that.
Okay, thank you.
So I think one of the things with the MGT study is that was done several months ago. I'm sure a lot of us attended the different meetings that were with it, took surveys. I took the survey 3 times, so I was in 3 different meetings, plus an online survey. I think a lot of people did that as well. I also thought back then bigger is better. And because we didn't have the amount of data that we have now, I think a lot of people had a different opinion now. We've done surveys in the central area now that people have had time to study this out. And the latest surveys shows, according to the ballot, is that 48% of those in Central are supporting this, and that only, 30% say no. Now that people have had time to study it, there's quite a difference. I know that my opinion changed drastically from the first time that I saw the MGT study. I thought that Lehi should go west because we saw that huge amount of surplus, but looking at it, trying to determine what was going to be the most equitable way, making sure that all of our needs could be met, we knew that this needed to be something where it was split 3 ways, because the West has extreme growth going on, the South has decline, and our central area is relatively balanced. So if we can make sure that we meet the needs of all areas, we need to do that in a way that the community is supported. And that's not what happened in 2022. The communities did not support the bond. That's why we're here. And so we need to be able to get to a place where we can continue to support the amazing education that ASD is providing, that we can continue to support our amazing educators. It's not about that at all. It's getting our communities where they can support what our schools need.
I have a quick point also. One thing I want us to remember as a community is we don't get to choose if Alpine School District stays together as one district, because every city gets to vote for themselves. Every community gets to vote for themselves. Cities participate in lots of different types of districts. They are in water districts and sewer districts and public service districts, all of those types of things. They also are in school districts. They have the opportunity to choose if they want to stay with one configuration or another and to put that on the ballot or to vote on it as a city council. The West District is likely to leave. If that happens, we automatically are a two-way split. If that's your preferred option, then obviously Prop 11 is not for you. But I do want you to remember that in the MGT study done by the district, that two-way split with the West leaving and the rest staying together has by far the largest deficit to overcome. That is $14.5 million a year in operational costs. My concern is, how do we solve that issue?
Yep, go ahead. 1 minute.
Okay, so Amber said that every city gets to vote on that. One of the things that's really sad about this situation is that in the middle of the summer, the legislature had a special session, and the district at that time had the ability to put something on the bond. They were likely going to put a two-way split on because it's what makes the most sense. Unfortunately, they literally took away the ability for the district to do that and put it in the hands of cities. And as a result, there's 81,000 voters in Orem, Linden, and PG that will not get to vote on this. And that's the group that rejected a split 3-1 2 years ago. And so you've actually disenfranchised voters through this process. That's kind of an interesting thing. But then the other piece is that it's patently false. People might change their mind because there's misinformation going around saying you're going to have better districts, lower taxes if you vote for this. And it's patently false. There's no scenario from either study
That's 1 minute.
that shows that.
Thank you. 1 minute over here.
Yeah, one of the concerns I have too is that I wish that the South was also voting in this. I think that the South could be a lot further along. I've had contact from city council members in the South who are assuming that they will remain as ASD. Like, they just have not been studying at the level that we have. So I do agree that I wish that it had been put on the ballot. I don't agree in a scenario where a majority of voters can come in and be able to determine for an area whether or not they can leave. The real fact of this is, and this was brought up in the 2022 orange split, is there is a $21 million deficit from the South. That was shown in the LRB studies. That is a huge deficit to have to overcome. That's a huge concern for our taxpayers, for affecting our teachers, affecting our students, that if we're at this complete offset from each other with a deficit, how's that going to impact everybody within the district? It's going to impact teachers the most as we try and figure out the best way to balance that.
Okay. Thank you. All right, I think it's important to clarify exactly who's voting on this initiative. So we have residents from American Fork, Lehi, Highland, Alpine, and Cedar Hills, and portions of Draper, okay, that are in Utah County boundaries. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it is the majority of the voters from all of those cities combined that will either pass or not pass this initiative. So if 60% of voters in Lehi say no, but overall, all of the cities combined say yes, then it does pass. Okay, so I want people to understand that. Our other 4 cities to the south, and Joe, I think you missed Vineyard, but
I did.
but we have Pleasant Grove, Linden, Orem, and Vineyard that are currently just waiting to see what happens. And then the other 4 cities, Saratoga Springs, Eagle Mountain, Cedar Fort, and what's the other one? Fairfield. They're voting for what's called the West District. Okay? So we just want to make sure everyone understands that clearly, that we're talking about the Central District, which is again American Fork, Highland, Alpine, Cedar Hills, Lehi, and a portion of Draper that's in Utah County. Okay. Let's talk about how long would it take, because I get this question a lot, how long would a split take to go into effect? And I think that, who's first this time? Yeah, we're over here.
So a split would take 32 months. It would, the new school districts would start operations in August 2027, July 1st. So the school term would start that August. This is a year longer than it took Jordan and Canyons to split. So if it passes this November, next summer, we would be having primaries for school board members. There would be an election in November 2025 for the school board members. They would begin operations. One of the first things they would do is hire a superintendent. The superintendent would start to then build the team for the district, and everything would be going through. There would be, the code is very well outlined now, how things are divided. There's very few things that are left up to actually determining between the two school boards, even down to the buses. The buses are divided by state-funded routes, and they're divided according to their size and their age and everything else like that. There's a lot of things that are outlined in code now that weren't in the past. And so that would be the process that would be going through, and then those new school districts would start July 2027. At the same time, Alpine School District would then be winding down. Everyone who is, all employees who are in a school would stay in that school, or there could be transfers, but all of those employees would be guaranteed a position in that school, position with the new school district that they're in, and then they would have guaranteed salary, benefits, everything that they have now for a further year after that. So there would be quite a long timeline that employees would be able to know exactly what these new school districts would be offering, and be a part of that new school district for a year before anything could possibly change. I also know that there are legislators who are working on furthering that protection, especially when it comes to classified employees, because there is nothing right now for classified employees, but we all know that is something very important, as they're critical also within the schools.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we'll start with Kate.
That timeline seems correct, unless, of course,
Hold it up.
our legislature introduces another wrench into the plan. I mean, they did that in June. So, I mean, as things are written currently, that checks. I do think it bears mentioning too that there is a little bit of confusion and concern about our district office employees. School level personnel are guaranteed a spot, but some of our district level personnel, it's not the same for them.
Okay, 1 minute.
Sorry, that's hard to change. I just wanted to maybe get a little bit of clarification on something right now. School boards only had the ability to put a split on the ballot for about 2 months. Previous to the 2024 legislative session, school boards did not have the ability to put a split on the ballot. That was a concern for some of our school boards, and Board Member Julie King was instrumental in speaking with Senator Keith Grover from Orem and running a bill that allowed that ability. The problem is legislators did not anticipate that of the 4 different ways that you can put a split on the ballot, that multiple different ways would be used on the same ballot. And so in that legislation, they did not introduce a prioritization of those 4 different methods.
Okay, that's 1 minute.
Okay,
Thank you.
And I would say that that was actually, that special session suspended it for 1 year for Alpine School District, which is very confusing and suspect. It's a strange thing to have a law on the books and then in special sessions say, actually for this year that doesn't apply. And that's what the legislature did. And so it's really unfortunate, because they could have passed legislation in the special session that said, we are going to prioritize how that gets put on the ballot. They could have said the governor will look at all the proposals and choose. They could have said the district has first priority. If they're going to put something on, they can put it on. And then if they don't, then interlocal agreements could. They could have done a lot of things. Instead, they took away the ability for Alpine School District, the people who are making the decisions educationally, not politically, and they didn't get to be the ones to make that decision.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll start with our against panel for this next question. I'm going to read the question, then I'm going to kind of word it specifically for the against and then the for. So, how does a smaller school district improve conditions for teachers? I don't see evidence of how a smaller district can maintain the levels of support and benefits I currently receive. So, we've had a couple questions about benefits. How does the splitting of the district affect the teachers' pay, their benefits, their retirement? And so, on the against side, if you want to talk about, all right, so what are the scenarios that we're looking at, whether it's 2 districts, 3 districts, or all 1 district still? And then obviously for just the central district, if you guys want to talk about how you foresee what the benefits are going to be for the teachers. So.
Okay, so here's how I would answer that. There's 3 ways you can address higher costs, because again, with a smaller district, you will have higher costs. So there's 3 ways to address that. You can either increase revenue through taxes, you can either cut programs, people, or other costs. So you can increase revenue, cut costs, or do a combination of both. Those are the only 3 ways you can deal with higher costs. So I will actually get to the point, I threw that teaser out. Here's how I would vote for the bond, or not the bond, here's how I would vote for Prop 11. Is if Prop 11 was really upfront with the public and said, you know what, we all value schools greatly, like that's what we want to do. It is going to cost more. There's some benefits to having a smaller district, but it is going to cost more. And so here's what we would have to do theoretically to be able to pay for those extra costs. We're going to need to bond immediately for a decent amount. We're going to need to raise the tax levies a little bit in order to support those things. Because then voters know what they're actually getting into. One of the things that scares me about this proposal is it's being advertised as lower costs, better districts, and you can't have those without paying more. And so it would make sense if, so imagine being a superintendent going into the new central district and a board. The public has been promised lower taxes, better schools, and it turns out that it's actually going to be quite a bit more, or we're going to have to cut quite a bit. That puts a board and a superintendent in a losing position immediately to start out. And so honestly, I would actually vote for this if it was saying, you know what, it does cost more. Both studies say it does cost more. And these don't even really address startup costs. But this is how we're going to address it, and people will have to be willing to pay a little bit more. I'm happy to pay a little bit more. But I think we don't say that because when you look at Utah Valley, we're a very conservative group that says no taxes at any cost, for any reason. And so that's why we advertise it as better schools, no tax increases. And so I think you've got to be aware of that element, or it really sets a new district up for failure.
Okay.
Okay, so one thing I want to point out is that 6 of the last 10 years, Alpine School District has raised our property taxes, and 2 of those 10 in which they did not, they were running a bond, which one passed and one didn't, which also raised property taxes. So I want us to remember that remaining together as one district does not mean there will be no tax increases in the future. In fact, historical data shows that there are likely to be tax increases in the future. Now, the LRB study done by the Central District cities says that because the property tax value in the central area is higher than Alpine District as a whole, it is likely that we would not need as significant of an increase as if we stay with the district as one entity. I would like to invite you to Google Utah Taxpayers Association School Spending Report. They compare every year the school spending of all 41 districts in Utah. And you can see that Alpine, though we are the largest, does not spend the least per student in the state. So there are pluses and minuses and different things happening in every different district in the state. And so I think that patrons in the central area who care very much for their schools and their teachers and their community would want to make sure that our class sizes are manageable, that our teachers have appropriate compensation, that they don't feel like they've lost something. I don't think that's going to be a fight at all for a new school board in our area, because I think that in the central area we care about those things. So I would just like to say, I don't think either side can say for sure what's going to happen with your taxes, but we do have a study done by an outside group that says that it is likely they will go up less if we do split.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, like, we need to be really careful about thinking just because we're a large district that automatically means that we're paying less in taxes. Because if we look at the size of districts that we're going to be in, this district would be around 35,000, which is a very large district. We'd be the 6th largest in the state. Canyons, Washington, and Weber, which are all the same size, have a lower tax rate than Alpine School District does. So if we're saying that we're going to save taxes by saying bigger, how is it the districts that are much smaller than us and the size we would actually be has a lower tax rate? And that's also taking into account that Canyons has passed 2 very large bonds. They've only raised taxes twice since their initial inception in 2009, and they have rebuilt every high school. They've built a new high school. They've done 27 building projects. They just purchased the eBay building. They've done incredible things, and somehow they have their community willing to support all these things and have a lower tax rate than we have in Alpine School District.
Okay, would you like a rebuttal?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So as far as, I believe that the original question was about class sizes.
No. It was
Can you repeat that?
teacher benefits.
Oh, the benefits. Well, here's the thing. When you have 14 municipalities sharing the load, you are able to take those taxes and make them smaller for everyone. And I think the other reason why we have had to pay, or why the district has had to amass taxes, is because there are caps that have been put on the amount that a school board can increase. And so they've had to do multiple because the law does not permit them to ask for what they need. Also, the size of the district doesn't necessarily make any sort of guarantee of smaller class sizes.
Okay. Would you like to address that?
I think that we need to be careful when saying specific things are going to happen or are not going to happen, because all we can go off of is the current data that we have, showing what's happening in other districts and what's happening in Alpine. And when I compare the school spending reports or property tax rates with other districts, Alpine would still, our central area would still be a large district. We would be the 6th largest district in the state of 41 districts. And our tax rates are not the lowest. Our class sizes are not the lowest. Our teacher compensation packages are great, but they're not the only great packages out there. And so I think we just need to remember that the critical piece here is electing school board members that support our schools. And that's going to be on us as citizens. We need to elect school board members that care about our teachers and care about our schools and will work to make them great. That's on us, and that doesn't change regardless of if we all stay together or if we split.
Okay, we're going to start with our 4 panel this time. And this is specific to some of the student programs that are currently available. So what's going to happen to students in smaller specialized programs that will not be able to exist, or how would they exist with this new district? And just some examples that were given, like Clear Creek, the DCF, the Space Camp, anything for students with disabilities. How would the smaller district affect those programs? And ready to go.
Okay, I know there's a lot of concerns about programs, and one of the things that I've had patrons raise to me quite frequently is their concern about our special needs students in particular. First of all, I do want to point out that a lot of the services that are provided for our special needs students are outlined in their individual education plan, which is a plan that is set out between the parents and the teachers and administrators of the school as to what services they believe the child needs. Now, once a child has an IEP, those services are now legally required of the school to provide for the child. So every district in the state has special ed. Every district in the state is providing those resources according to what the child's IEP needs are. And most of that funding and those requirements come from the federal government. And so regardless of what size our district is, those requirements will remain in place. Now, we do have a lot of specialty programs in Alpine District. For example, we have ATEC, which is in American Fork. We have Dan Peterson, which is in American Fork. But because the size of our district is so large, we have duplication of these services already. So for example, there is a school called Horizon in Saratoga Springs, is that right? That is the equivalent of Dan Peterson for the west side of the district. There is ATEC West, which is the equivalent of ATEC on the east side of the district. Now, it is absolutely possible that it might take a couple of years for the southern area to get those programs going. Well, we have the opportunity to create any type of reciprocal agreement that we want with any other district, and for them to bring their students to us, or for us to take our students to them, and to compensate them appropriately. This is already happening in Alpine District on a yearly basis. We already have students coming from one district to another, and each district then cuts the other district a check for how much money they should have, they had collected for that student in property taxes, and that money is sent to the other district. So we're already doing that. We already have students from Nebo, from Provo, from Jordan, from Canyons coming to our district, and students from Alpine going to their districts. That can continue. We could continue to do that and to help provide those services until the other district felt like it was ready to take that burden. Now, well, not really a burden, but to take that responsibility and was all set up and ready to go. There are a lot of things that we could still work together on and keep those things that are great about being big, but still have enough representation to feel that our district is more locally oriented and controlled. Now, we do have programs that will have to work it out, and a lot of those things are gonna have to be negotiated as the split happens, but like we said, we have almost 3 years to work through that and to try to figure out how to best meet the needs of all students in all 3 areas.
So the hardest part about tonight is using the microphone, apparently. So my school is a DLI school. We have the Portuguese immersion program. It comes up from Rocky Mountain Elementary School to Oak Canyon Junior High. And one of the things that one of my assistant principals attended a DLI meeting this week. Our district is very unique in that it offers Portuguese, Spanish, French, Chinese, I believe even German immersion, and maybe he said German, he lied to me. But anyway, we have a lot of offerings within our own district, and to think that those 3 districts would be able to continue all of those immersion programs. Obviously, one district would keep 1 or 2, and another would keep 1 or 2. As Amber mentioned, yes, we do have people from other districts that come to attend those programs, but at the same time, we go from one district with many DLI programs, which they are trying to equalize and balance because they are not right now, to a district with 1, maybe 2 of those DLI programs. In regard to our special education program, a lot of people seek out Alpine School District just because we've got some great things going on, and our related servers and a related server is like an occupational therapist, an adaptive PE teacher, etc. We've got a gentleman in our district that is an occupational therapist that lives in Lehi, and he drives through multiple smaller districts. He drives through Juab, he drives through Nebo, Provo to get to Alpine, because our district is big enough to employ him to provide services that other districts cannot. And we find right now with our students with special needs, we actually are giving them more services than we are legally required to, and that would take a hit. And people like this occupational therapist would likely not drive through all of these districts because they likely wouldn't have the same opportunities in a smaller district. Did you have anything?
So Amber mentioned that the federal government, pays for certain programs. That's partially correct. Special ed, for example, is a federal program, but it's only funded at about between 15 and 17% of the cost of actually running it. And so it's still going to fall on a district to supplement that, upwards of 80+% on those types of programs. Also, she mentioned Horizon Dan Peterson and 2 ATEX. That still means we have to build another one of each of those. And so, again, if we're willing to pay for it, and let's be upfront about it is going to cost more, then let's do that.
Okay. Would you like your minute?
Yeah. One of the things that's really nice right now is the South has 2 empty buildings that they've closed, they haven't liquidated. I think that this is something that's really important. We know that these K through 12 and post-secondary schools are vital and they are full. And I think one of the great things about being able to have smaller geographical areas is that we won't be busing these children long distances, that they will have to have these services provided closer to home. The other thing is with the dual language immersion, the ALL programs, these programs are around $600,000 a year, and that funding comes from the state. Alpine School District funds about $20,000 towards these programs. They're mainly self-funded. So as long as we have the children that are interested in taking these programs, that takes up a classroom to have those programs. So I don't see those programs going away, because we have the interest for those programs, no matter what size of district we are, and as long as we can fill the classroom, then we're not going to have a huge expense being able to keep those running.
Okay. 1 minute?
Sure, I'll take the minute. Again, when we start talking about costs, it's about every city doing their part. It's interesting, if you go onto the elections site, you can go precinct by precinct and see who passed what. And you can go back to bonds in the past and see who has passed bonds. Who's passed bonds in the past is Orem. American Fork has been amazing at passing bonds, precinct by precinct. The 2 cities that don't pass bonds is Alpine and Highland. Even out west on the last bond, there were multiple precincts that didn't pass it, and the ones that did pass it, generally they barely passed it, right? One of the reasons I think there's such an emphasis on, with the foresight that there will be better schools and less taxes is because people here will not vote for taxes. And so just understand that it will cost more, and I don't have confidence that people are willing to pay that.
That's the time on that. All right, we're going to start with our against panel this time. We've been talking about duplication of costs, so this question specifically talks about that. In discussions about the duplication of costs for multiple districts, some have suggested that districts could share services for transportation, physical facilities, technology, or alternative and online programs. What evidence is there that these kinds of shared services are viable, given that these shared departments would have to try to respond to the decisions of different boards of education concerning the services and systems that are funded or implemented? So would they be viable, not viable from your side? How do you view that particular stance?
Currently, I'm not aware of a situation where that is in practice or works very well. I do think that it is an interesting proposal. I don't think that it's necessarily realistic. And if people are voting for this thinking that, we're just going to share resources, then why are we splitting? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I was talking to a member, a district office employee that was talking about their data team and how they have 3 engineers that work on managing 100 different applications for the district. And, by that logic, each of the 3 districts would get 1 of those engineers. However, 1 engineer cannot manage those 100 apps by themselves. That's why there's 3 people. And so it's not, there's a lot of issues with it. And again, it begs the question, if we're just going to share resources, then what's the point?
And I would use a divorce analogy here and say, you know what? There are times where a divorce is completely appropriate. In cases of abuse or other things, a divorce is okay, right? That's a good thing. But divorce never ends up being better financially for either party. It just never does. And imagine in a divorce trying to share resources. We're going to share a car after divorce to split the cost. That's a little bit ridiculous to think that that's going to work very well. One of the arguments against that is simply the idea of propinquity, the idea that where something is matters. It's going to be a lot harder to share a lot of resources simply because, by the way, from our district office, it is a 45-minute drive out to the furthest school out west. You can be in North Salt Lake in the same time. So are we going to bus kids to a program 45 minutes away? Probably not. But one of the things about that divorce analogy that's curious, divorce only makes sense when there's a problem. It doesn't make sense to have a divorce when the family is thriving. Imagine how ridiculous it would be if an outside entity came to a family and said, once you get past 8 kids, we're going to make you split up. And we're going to send 3 kids with dad, 3 kids with mom, and the 3 oldest, they're just on their own. That's a ridiculous thing to do. And so this is not that different. If you look at Alpine schools, across the board they're thriving, not perfect. And there are schools that are struggling for a variety of reasons. But we're thriving. And there's no reason for an outside entity to say, you know what, we need to have you go different directions and have smaller households.
Okay.
I want to share that I think some of those analogies are inaccurate. First of all, if there's a situation where one party wants to leave a marriage and the other does not, I don't think that one should be able to say you have to stay and the other one then has to stay. So that's why I think it's important that individual areas do get to vote for what they want in their individual area to occur. Also, I would like to point out that Alpine already has agreements with other districts where we provide services for those districts. For example, our purchasing department does all the purchasing for Provo District and for multiple charter schools in our area. That's because since we're large, we can often get good prices on things. But sometimes we're large enough that we're seeing what I would phrase as a diseconomy of scale. For example, the rate at which we are using our insurance right now means that our insurance costs are going up double-digit percentages year after year after year because we're using it so much. So I think there are good parts and bad parts about being able to collaborate and work with another district, but it obviously can work because we have been purchasing everything for Provo District for quite some time. And like I said, for multiple charter schools.
Just to talk about the duplicative costs, the LRB study actually analyzed that using the 2 different methods between $5 to $6 million a year, which would be split between the 3 districts. So our district would probably be looking at $2 to $3 million in duplicative costs. And we do have a historical precedence for this. We can look at Jordan and Canyons where they did not bring in a bunch of employees from all over the place to be able to sustain those two school districts once they split. What they found is that middle management layer just simply went away, and that we had those employees being able to manage projects and less than people. So we do have a bit of a history with that, and also some data on that. One thing that I just also wanted to add in too, and just to give about Alpine and Highland, I think that the 2022 bond kind of is something that we all know had a lot of things going into it. So looking back at the 2016 bond with Alpine and Highland, they passed it at an incredible rate. It was high 70s. And the only thing they got out of that was a new roof for Lone Peak. They passed it at a higher rate than Lehi did. We got a high school rebuild, we got an elementary school, we got a junior high. This is an area that cares about education. I think that we've just moved so far apart, we're so distanced from each other in the different communities that we just aren't able to support everybody's needs. And that's really what it comes down to. It has nothing with the quality of education that Alpine School District is providing. It's about our communities and what they're going to support. That we can't continue down this path and keep on raising taxes and be able to meet the amount of needs that we have in the district, because we know we can't pass a bond together.
So the bond failed in 2020 by, I believe, 4%. I don't personally believe, 2022, I don't personally believe that we could never pass a bond again. There was a lot of confusion that went with that. But one of the things that I have researched recently is that we have done a lot of building projects in our district since 2000. And really quick, there have been 22 brand new builds in the west, or what we're calling the west interlocal, 16 new builds in the central interlocal, and 3 in the south area. There have been no rebuilds or remodels or closures in the west. There have been 4 rebuilds, 6 remodels, and 0 closures in the central, 8 rebuilds, 6 remodels, and 3 closures in the south area, with a total of 22 projects west, 26 projects central, and 17 minus the 3 closures in the south. In that central area, 11 of those came from the Lehi area. I think our district's done a pretty dang good job trying to split up resources to meet the needs of everyone, and I don't believe we couldn't pass it on again.
Okay, that's your minute. You get a minute if you'd like.
I will say that during the 2022 bond, I was the representative for the Alpine and Highland cities, and I heard repeatedly from my patrons that they were unwilling to continue to fund schools in faraway areas. I know from my house, it takes me 45 minutes to get to Cedar Valley High School, and we have schools even farther out than that. So I think that it's a legitimate concern to be concerned about passing a bond in the future. We've heard that the reason why the 2022 bond did not pass was because there was a proposed split on the ballot, and that could be accurate also. But we don't know if these 2 interlocals fail, if there will never be another split proposal on the ballot. So saying we'll just run another bond and it's likely to pass, I don't think that that's accurate.
Okay, so we're going to go to our 4 team on this one, and it does talk about kind of the district as a whole. How does a split either help benefit the entirety of everyone that's involved in the current Alpine School District? So kids in Saratoga versus Lehi versus Orem. I'm combining a bunch of questions here, but there's a lot of people talking about that Orem is currently in a negative enrollment, and the costs for rebuilds are delayed for new builds. So how does the split benefit each area?
Yeah, so with Lehi, when we looked at the MGT study, we were in a different configuration in every one of their options. So we studied this very intensely to try and figure out what was going to be something that would be best for our residents and our students and our teachers. They were looking at the different areas. The west area is going to be in a period of growth for 40 years. That means they're going to have high needs that are going to take priority over everyone else's needs. We will always fund growth. If you look at how we've spent capital money the last 2 years in Alpine School District, 95% of that's gone west because they need it and they're in desperate need for a high school now. And so if we're looking at being able to meet the needs of our area, where Lehi really needs a new elementary school out west. We have 2 elementary schools that are over 1,000 students, and we need the AF rebuild that has been put off for quite a while. And Lone Peak, they need more classrooms. They have more students per square footage than Westlake does. So there's a lot of needs here that we know are just going to continue to get pushed off because they're not as great of a need as making sure that our schools are not shut down by the fire marshals. So we looked at those things and trying to figure out what we could do to make sure that we never go through this again. That we want to make sure that we're in a healthy place where everybody's needs can be met. And so that's why we looked at the east side and the schools there, knowing that we could, if we divided it between PG and AF, each of those areas would have 4 high schools, each of those areas would be responsible for a rebuild. Each of those areas would have a large funding source. Lehi has 11 billion in property tax value. Orem is 10 billion. No one else is close to those 2 cities. So we know that we can take care of those needs between those 2 cities. And also looking at the south area, they have a higher property tax value per student than we do in the central area. We know that all the needs in every area can be taken care of, and then also felt that our residents would be able to support those bonds that came through because they would be close to their communities and they would be schools that they would be driving past that would be part of their kids, and we felt that that would be something that we could get the areas to be able to support each other in the way that they were moving apart from each other in 2022.
I also want to point out there's been some concern as to why, about Pleasant Grove as a city and why they went one way or the other. And I do think we need to talk about how tightly Linden is tied to both Pleasant Grove and to Orem. Nearly every school through that area has children either in Orem and Linden or Linden and Pleasant Grove. Pleasant Grove High School has several hundred students that live in Linden, and so separating them from Linden would have made some really problematic numbers for those schools and caused some stress in that area.
All right, John Dewey, one of the greatest educators of all time, it was over a century ago. He was at Columbia Teachers College. He said this: what the best and wisest parent wants for his child, that must we want for all children of the community. Anything less is unlovely, and left unchecked destroys our democracy. That's a big statement, and I believe it deeply. And I think one of the reasons I'm concerned with a 3-way split is I worry that there is a little bit of an elitism in the central area, saying we don't want to be with Orem and PG. I think if you were to look at the MGT study, and I think I would encourage you to talk to members of Alpine School District Board and that kind of thing. Talk to them, find out what was going to be put online. It was most likely going to be a 2-way split because it's what made the most sense. I spent the last 21 years in the Orem area, and I love deeply the Orem area. And I think it's unfair that they were disenfranchised, and I think it's unfair and not a good disposition to say, let's take ours and they can deal with theirs. I think there's an element of democracy that requires a collective heart and a collective action. And so that's what I would say to that. You also have
Response to Heather saying, we never want to go through this again, I completely agree. I also think we got to do it right the first time. And I don't know if we are set up, I don't believe that we are set up to do it right the first time. And one of the most highly impacted areas of, well, I shouldn't say areas, but one of the most highly impacted factors of I'm sorry, I'm so flustered. Wow, I've got so much passion here. Culture. Alpine School District is known for its culture, a culture of collaboration, a culture of working together to solve problems. We have teachers and administrators communicate all the time that we love getting together and helping each other work through problems, and we are better for it. The X factor that makes people want to, or makes them love the neighborhood school, is not the tax rate. It's the feeling that the students have when they're there. It is the culture that our district has, promoted and helped to build the capacity within teachers and within administrators, and that would be one of the most crucial losses that nobody is talking about.
Okay, that's your time. Okay. All right, 1 minute.
I just want to say I wish that you had had some of your career in the central area, Joe, because I don't get the elitist, we don't care about those kids from the people in this area. I think that's an accurate thing to say. The board voted 4-3 for a two-way split. That is hardly a mandate that this is the best choice. I think that that's unfair to put out there. I think that people in my area absolutely care about what's happening in Orem, but I don't want to tell people in Orem that they have to close a school. I want them to decide how they want to address their needs. We'll decide how we want to address our needs, and that's okay, but I don't want to close a school in Orem. I did that as a board member, and I hated it. I hate talking to a community and saying, we're going to decide. I know I don't live in your area, though I actually had lived in that area as a child. I don't want to decide for them what needs to happen to resolve this deficit issue that will occur if the West leaves.
Okay, that's your minute. Okay, 1 minute.
So on this idea of doing it right the first time, this is a massive undertaking to split any district in any way. And so it is crucial to do it right the first time. And again, why not bring educators to the table? Why did we take it away from making it an educational decision and now it's a political decision? And why is it that a third of our community doesn't even get to vote? I think one of the things that Kate emphasized is that idea of culture, right? We want that culture to continue, and it should. Like, again, Alpine's thriving. Again, we're not opposed to splits if we actually pay for it. One of the things that we've talked a lot about, though, tonight is the financial element. I wish we would have spent more time on the thrivability elements, because there's all kinds of elements from a thrivability standpoint for students, teachers, and families.
Okay, that's
that
your
are really
minute.
important.
All right, we're almost out of time. I'm going to give each of you 3 minutes to do a closing statement. I want you to take this question into consideration as you do your closing statement. And because we opened with the against, we'll close with the for. And so you'll get 3 minutes. You'll get 3 minutes, then that will be it. We will not have any rebuttals after those 3 minutes. This is your closing statement. And the question I want you to consider as you give your closing statement is, speaking from your position, whether you're for or against, what are the biggest risks and rewards if your position was adopted or voted for? Okay? And so 3 minutes, we'll start with the for. And this, again, before I start that, let's give a round of applause to our panelists for coming out tonight. And also, let's thank the Timpanogos Arts Foundation for loaning us the Valentine Theater for using this facility tonight. You can see the wonderful backdrop. We encourage you to come watch the play, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. That's my quick commercial for them. Okay, and finally, there were a lot of questions where I had to combine questions. Several questions weren't read. I'm going to submit all of these questions exactly how they were written to all 4 of you, and invite you to post them on whatever site you'd like to. But these are the questions in their entirety that we received from this debate, and I encourage you to answer in their entirety every single question that was submitted.
That sounds like homework.
Yeah, it is indeed. Okay. All right, so 3 minutes. Ready? Let's go for the for, and then we'll go to the against. And again, thank you for your time today.
So we've heard a lot of concerns tonight, real concerns, important concerns, That's our big risk, because no matter what the outcome is on November 5th, those concerns aren't going away, because there's no going back to the state we were of Alpine School District in 2021. And so what I want to leave with you is one final thought that was asked to me by one of my son's teachers, and he said, what if it could be better? What if we could keep everything that's great about Alpine School District while learning from what other districts have done and taking into account all the incredible work that our educators have and our leaders have accomplished, and what if we could make it better? What if we could reduce class sizes and make sure that students get the personalized attention that they deserve? What if we could offer more programs and tailor them to individual students and make sure that every diverse learner gets exactly what they need? And you know what? We could pay teachers more. We could keep the best educators in our schools. We can elect leaders that will put students and teachers first, leaders who understand the unique needs of our communities. And how can we do that? By having communities that are willing to fund and support our schools. We have the educators. We have the employees who will put their entire hearts and souls into taking care of our kids. We have all that. That doesn't change. What changes is that we listen to what our communities are willing to support so that we don't lose the best parts of what we have now.
Amber, do you want to add to that, or you have another minute? Okay. Thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause, please. Okay, and we'll conclude with our against panel. Thank you.
Alpine School District is one of the highest performing districts in the state. It's also the largest. The size is an asset, not an impediment. It allows flexibility in how resources are used. It also, due to its size, Alpine's economy of scale allows for competitive pricing of materials, supplies, and even employee benefits that allow us to stretch our dollars even further. Our size allows for content area specialists and coaches that provide instructional support and professional development to positively influence teacher capacity and student learning. Our size allows for extensive collaboration opportunities. Our size makes us a desired district for employees in that there are many opportunities for growth and advancement, not to mention many options for employees to live within the district they work. We are not perfect, but we are committed to continuous improvement. We only get one chance to split, and our students, teachers, and patrons deserve our due diligence. We view Prop 11 the same way we view a home remodeling project. And anybody who has undertaken such a remodel will tell you it is always more expensive than anticipated. Often underestimated is the scope and complexity of the task, and it cannot be undone once initiated. Once the bond did not pass in 2022, I heard countless people saying, okay, we get it now, can we get a do-over? There is no do-over, so if we're going to do it, we should do it right.
All right, and you're going to think I'm making this up. I'm not. I got a text today from a sweet widow down about 4 houses down from me, and I've never gotten a text from her, and I'm actually going to read you the text as my final word. She says, "Busy Joe, I would like to have your opinion regarding 11. What do you think? I've never talked to her about Prop 11. I think I'm voting no. I do not want the district to split. Studies that the cities did that say it would save money were only conducted in a few weeks and only looked at a few data points and used different taxable values when comparing ASD to potential districts. The 6-month study the district conducted looked at far more variables and concluded that splitting districts would cost everyone more money and lose services for students from programs that would be too expensive. When Jordan Canyon split, they were in a deficit for 10 years, and employee compensation packages dropped for the first 3 years. Large districts just create more opportunities for everyone. A principal from back east said all the districts in Virginia are county-wide and extremely successful. Her BYU application was actually given a scoreboard because of the school district she was from. ASD test scores are significantly higher than state averages, and I just think we have so many benefits from the larger district. And I thought, wow, there is an 85-year-old woman who's done her homework. Sounds like better than I did.
That's your time, Joe.
I want to encourage, honestly, do your homework, right? Go out and see what
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. All right, let's give them all a round of applause one more time. Okay, and we have talked to the panelists. You are welcome to come talk to them individually. They'll make themselves available. We're trying to clear out of here by 9 o'clock. If either side has anything they want to pass out, any kind of information, both sides have agreed that we are not going to pass out information in the building. So if you're going to pass anything out, please do it outside of the building, and let's just keep everything civil, okay? Thanks again, everyone, and again, finally, please go and vote. Educate yourselves and vote. Have a good night.